Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. And that's how business should be run. A few months ago, I attended the funeral of one of my best bosses ever, Johan, but we all called him John. I verified with a former manager/coworker of mine, and since the company as it was no longer exists, this shouldn't be a problem. This is the story of my encounter with an extremely entitled person and why I believe some people are just plain evil. It plays out in the Netherlands. Backstory. I was hired originally as a systems administrator by John's company. The company actually consisted of several companies grouped together under one roof. We occupied 2 stories within the building, and there were a few hundred people working there. Besides our company, there were a few others in this building, amongst which a law firm as well as an accountant's office. I really like my job, and when I'm in such a position, I also enjoyed getting involved and learning as much as I can about the company itself. This is how I learned about minor issues between development and project management, in specific with time schedules. The devs always shut down a bit during official meetings with management, which would often lead to problems with time estimates for projects. Fast forward a few years, and I'm now the operations manager. Always disliked the title because I fancied something more tech. It basically means that I'm always somewhat involved with internal projects. I'm allowed to ask for assistance from secretary when needed, and I have full access to all of our IT infrastructure. My direct colleague, head of IT, is my immediate failsafe/backup, and I'm his. Yes, I always wore a suit since that day, but I'm also the kind of guy who'd still go collect a PC somewhere if that could help my colleagues. Say I have a meeting with XX later today. Would it help you guys if I picked up the PC from YY next door for you? I always kept tabs on tickets and tried to help out, even if that wasn't really my job anymore. Getting under a table in a suit to help my colleagues? I don't mind. A new project. It started on a Friday. I'd done a 14-hour shift the day before. I covered for someone at IT support for the evening because of an emergency and was considered to take the afternoon off as compensation when I noticed Jamie, the company secretary, being nervous. She wanted to go on lunch break, but her colleague wasn't back yet to take over for her, stuck in traffic. She also couldn't postpone her lunch due to an evaluation meeting later, and she was going to cover for John's secretary after that. So I asked her to show me how the phone works and to leave a manual of the telecom system. I quickly grabbed my laptop so I could work on some administration and reports and figured I'd take off once Jamie's colleague got back. Being a manager, in my opinion anyway, is also about helping our colleagues out whenever you can. Then I got a call from a very important customer who wanted to speak to John. I transfer him. Yay, I can do secretary work too. But stupid me asked his secretary if he was in without telling her that I got a call for him. Fortunately, not a huge problem, but John did tell me to keep this in mind for a possible next time. Direct transfer for management, secretary transfer only for upper management. Gotcha. The next week, I'm invited to a meeting in John's office together with the rest of the management team. As it turns out, very important customer, Vic, proposed a joint venture to bring in a very big client. Our company would cover ICT requirements and administration, while Vic would take care of the logistics and actually bringing in the client. Vic's first meeting with the client would happen in our building because we had much better accommodations, such as pretty state-of-the-art conference rooms, which were also pretty awesome as cinema to watch Star Wars, which we obviously never officially did. Because of my rather unique position, being somewhat involved with every tech-related department, it gets decided that I'll do the first tour with Mr. Vic to show him around, explain what we can offer, and set up an official draft to outline what we're going to do. Be sure to invite Jamie over to take notes every time you guys talk business, document everything, and don't make any official promises without a secretary present. I was hyped. The incident. Everything went quite good. The first day, I gave him a tour around the offices, demonstrated the tech of our conference rooms, and the 3 of us set up a solid draft proposal in 3 or so days. Jamie was a great help, but I did get the impression that this thing weighed on her. She was often nervous and even seemed a bit uncomfortable around Mr. Vick. She was still an intern, getting offered a full-time position soon. I already knew this from John, even rooted for her. She was awesome at her job. We're 3 or 4 weeks in. I get into the office around 2 p.m. to witness the aftermath of the big start. I first stop on the other floor, where the conference rooms are, and everything seems to be going smooth. I walk around a bit. You can't look inside from the outside. And when I don't see any wandering strangers, I head up to my level. I get to the main desk and see Jamie in tears, heavily sobbing and getting comforted by colleagues. I'm shocked and ask what's going on. Her first reaction, "What do you care?" Which completely caught me off guard. I take out my phone, call up the head of IT, and tell him that I'm sorry, but he needs to cover for me the rest of the day until further notice. I then ask Jamie again what's going on, and she tells me that she's getting fired. What? That can't be right. But she's convinced. And then the magic word comes out. I ruined the big project. I ask her how she did that. That wasn't important because Mr. Vick said as much. Now I was puzzled and very much intrigued. I asked her if she'd come with me to sort a few things out. She reluctantly agreed, and we went straight to an empty executive office, one of my perks, and I offered her a drink. Coffee, scotch, Bailey's. We ended up with a coffee plus Bailey's mix. First time I drank that stuff. Probably in complete violation of a few rules, but right now I needed a drink too, and I was actually somewhat allowed. Sorta. So then Jamie finally tells me what happened. She went to look into the conference room to see if things went according to plan and ask if they needed something. Then she noticed that the room was packed, jammed. Way more people in there than the fire regulations allowed for. So she told Mr. Vick, who then scolded her, berated her, and told her to mind her own damn business and directed her out, telling her that he'd be talking to John about this, how she was actively sabotaging the project, and he'd make sure she got fired. I was pissed, especially since I knew this was all a load of nonsense. How'd I know? Because John made it quite clear to me when I signed the contract for my new management position that bullying, entitled behavior, disrespecting your colleagues, and anything within that context was a reason for dismissal for us managers. Another thing, safety regulations were sacred to my company. So I called security, filed for an official request to look at the security cameras and save the relevant parts. I'll never forget that next moment. So he scolded your colleague? Holy crap! That's not the only thing he did. No, he wasn't just scolding. This lowlife also deemed it necessary to physically shove Jamie around, and he forcefully pushed her out of the room where she fell on the floor, after which he slammed the door shut again. Adrenaline rushes are a strange thing. I can tell you that. I can easily see how some people can get carried away during such a rush. All I wanted to do was to shut the whole thing down and yell at this guy, but I had to make sure we were covered. Of course, there was also the alcohol at work. I called my direct colleagues in group conference on speaker. I wanted to keep Jamie fully in the loop, and the three of us, head of development, IT, and myself, all agreed. So I said to Jamie that I had an important task for her and asked if she wanted to help me shut the whole thing down. Jamie called for building security to send some people over. I texted John and briefed him. Then us three managers with Jamie in tow went over there. Mr. Vick was livid, especially when he saw Jamie, who was standing right next to us. I even got the impression he completely overlooked us at first because he actually stormed over to her. Yeah, other John, head of IT, we sometimes jokingly call him Little John because Big John was the CEO, was standing next to her really quick, and he even shoved Mr. Vick when the D-bag got too close to her for his liking. Next moment, the big boss storms in with someone else. Both have an expression of thunder on their faces. They are pissed. For obvious reasons, I need to be careful with the next parts. I also don't know everything that came from this. But as it turns out, our CEO, John, was having dinner with the CEO of Vic to celebrate the joint venture when this crap show happened. Mr. Vic, the guy who I'd worked with, got fired on the spot after I'd used my phone to play the security footage on the big screen. This had been sent to me by security. His boss wasn't happy. But that wasn't enough for John. Oh no. He and Jamie went a few stories down to the law firm later that day to make sure Jamie got proper legal representation, paid for by the company, because John wanted that SOB roasted one way or the other, and make sure that this was made right with Jamie, who also got assurances that very same day that if she wanted to, she'd get hired as soon as the internship was over. Jamie was in charge of handling the aftermath of that conference. I kind of pushed for that, and she also thanked me for it later because that really helped her self-esteem. Basically, we no longer relied on Vic got it covered, but we asked all visitors for their details to know who we were dealing with. So now people had to follow her orders and directions about leaving the premises. However, I cannot understand to this very day what kind of people would still want to do business with a sleazeball who plain out abuses coworkers. But at the same time, there was a huge amount of money involved there, and in all fairness, I suppose it's easy to have an opinion about stuff that doesn't directly involve you. I don't know what to think of this one, to be honest. As for me, I got scolded, in a friendly way, for drinking alcohol on the job, but at the same time, I also got compliments for the way I handled things, especially for taking action and escalating the whole thing instead of worrying about big money and very important client. We ended up cutting ties with Vic, but ironically enough, it seems we did leave an impression with very big client who relied on our services a few times. And our next story. The main point of our story, our OP's neighbor liked to complain about petty things. Well, there you have it, sir. Neighbor complains about our plants not being HOA approved. Our community is new and houses are still being built. My neighbor bought a corner lot house and we have a house near to his. Corner lots are cheaper because you don't technically have a view of the lake, looks over our lawn. We also have a strict HOA. Both of us have been living here for about 6 months. We planted 2 frangipani bushes in our lawn, my wife's favorite flower, without the HOA's consent. They tend to be ugly most of the year because the leaves fall off, but she wanted them. Our neighbor told us that he didn't think they were allowed by the HOA. I guess he looked our plants up in the rule book and subtly threatened that we shouldn't plant bushes that would block his view. We weren't having that, and we all know the best way to get your neighbors to like you is to listen to their advice and follow the rules. So we got 20 areca palms and lined our lot with them on both sides. HOA approved the plants and placement. While we're digging the holes, he walked out with a sad look on his face and said this, "I guess we should not have gotten a corner lot if we wanted a view." We left the back of our yard open to keep our view of the lake, but he was SOL. You complain about our yard? We'll follow the rules. Now he has to live in a house without a view and a tiny lot in Florida. I bet his brand new house just devalued $10,000. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.